Shields are completely fictional space magic. They have their place, but not in a realistic setting. Let's get into it. Hey guys, Space Marine 658 here. So this episode is going to be kind of about why shields suck. There's a lot of different kind of shields in modern video games, especially space games. There's always, the game where, you're playing a fighter. Not going to name any names. There's a few big titles where, you've got the shield and you've got specific weapon types that are going to take down your shields. And, they all kind of suck. There's sort of an element of ease that they give you. They make your game a little easier, and not everybody's down for a challenging video game, and the most realistic game isn't necessarily gonna be what everyone wants. I think that shields are kind of overdone, and far too often they're sort of a crutch. When you can't think of an interesting way to have players either avoid damage or repair from damage, you just give them a bunch of shields, and then when they take damage, it's they die quickly, or they have to use specific repair items and things like that. It's all very obfuscated. It's a little too much in my opinion. And so what I'd like to do with this game is take a more realistic approach, but not just realistic for the sake of realism, something more interesting than just here's a shield, it exists. Because let's be honest, in terms of quality, just throwing on shields on a ship, it's very easy to do, and you can make them look very pretty, but it doesn't necessarily make your game good. So what I want to do with my game is focus on, the combat that can happen when you've got ships slugging each other with no shields. There's a lot of damage that can be done when you've got nothing that can protect you with an invisible barrier. This is something I want to explore both from a storytelling standpoint and from a gameplay mechanical standpoint. What sort of parts of the ship can be hit and cause certain types of damage. There's things called power nodes, sort of like electrical substations throughout ships, that I'd like the players to have get hit, and it could knock out power for a big portion of your ship. Of course, it won't be just as simple as that, because in real life militaries build redundancies in, and so that's something that would be taken into account. But I'd like for that to be able to happen. So if you make a really good shot that hits just right on the enemy ship, you could knock out power for their weapon systems, and what kind of gameplay elements could arise from that. That's sort of what I want to explore in my game. And so I think that for a lot of games, they just lean on that crutch of having shields being their big defensive system, when there's so many other cool ways you can defend against enemy ships. For one, space is huge, so the odds of your enemy actually hitting you are very slim, especially if you're on the move, and especially if you're moving very sporadically, very wildly. Of course, as you get closer and closer, that gets much easier. And so I want to kind of simulate some of that, as well as when you are using space combat. I think missiles, at least for the most part, are going to be actually more popular than most projectiles. Now, projectiles are going to have the advantage of, if your enemy doesn't know you fired them, say that you're launching a surprise attack, that is going to give you a huge advantage, because missiles are giving off large plumes of fire. They're very easy to detect due to heat, versus something like a kinetic projectile, even fired at either slow or high speeds, are going to have such power and be moving almost undetectable. Of course, you're going to have systems to detect meteoroids and micrometeoroids and things like that, but to detect something moving very fast and moving silently, that's designed to not be reflective, say it's got an anti-reflection coating or even anti-radar coating, it's going to be one of those things that can get in and get out and hit the enemy very hard. And so I kind of want to lean into those kind of systems, those kind of weapons, give the player the ability to play a more stealthy game if they want to, or if they need to, or if they decide to roll up on the enemy and punch them in the face, but understand that there's going to be consequences from that. And so that's sort of the basis of why I think shields wouldn't work in my game, as well as why they're kind of crappy overall, because you kind of remove that component when you have big, bright, shiny shields. They're very easy to detect, very easy to see. You know, you're going to see them from pretty far off. Now, while there's still the vastness of space, so of course, you know, there's some pliability there, and you can always have shields be able to be turned off and on. I think that for, you know, more realistic sake, shields kind of get in the way. And so that's why with my game, I'm kind of going to focus more on, like I said, the subsystem route, and, you know, damage actually mattering, especially with the way this game's going to play out. You know, with your ship being like a sole ship, only one there in the system, you know, you're going to have to be concerned with, if I take damage, can I repair it, and can I get the crew back? Because crew losses is something I want to take into account too. Because if half your ship gets blown off, you're probably not going to have the crew to really man most weapons. Now, in a realistic sense, most ships are relatively automated nowadays, and in the future I assume they'd be even more so. So it's not going to be like losing 10 crewmen suddenly makes your weapon systems completely unviable. But there's got to be a sort of line in the sand where the automated systems can only do so much, and they're going to be less accurate than a, you know, human gunner. Now, there's some argument that can be made, you know, with sci-fi and AI and stuff, that they should technically be more accurate than a human. I think that I would like to go the route of sort of in between, where AI assisted gunners are the best choice, but AI on themselves, or humans on themselves, struggle quite a bit. Because I think that's pretty realistic. I think even in the future, when we have artificial intelligence, you know, helping us make these calculations, we're still going to want to have the human component, because humans can sort of think in unquantitative ways. At least as of yet, we haven't been able to quantize how humans can think. And so being able to have a human go, yes, I should fire here, but I'm going to actually fire a little bit off here, allows us to give a little bit more flexibility in combat, which I think is something that would work very well in the setting for my game, as well as it's sort of my personal philosophy, how I think weapons will be handled. Because even nowadays, you know, they've got UAV drones that can sort of pinpoint human sources and make those kind of decisions and call the shots, but they always have a human finger on the trigger. No matter what, no matter how automated it is, there's always a human being pulling the final trigger. The AI just gathers everything up to that point to allow the human to make that choice. And I think that'll only continue into the future. That's just something I think that we're going to want to do. And so with that being said, and with shields kind of being sort of a moot point at that point, I think the big focus is going to be sort of missile systems, missile defense systems, that kind of thing. And so with that, the current ship, so this is the current layout for the ship. It's still being worked on. I'm still adding more missile, see those little holes, those are all going to be missile pods. I've added about, I think there's 10 on here so far. Oh, sorry. Was up late last night taking care of the little man. But as it is right now, there is a lot of spots for missile pods, as well as there's a lot of spots for anti-missile defense systems, some of which may change in the final version of the game, but they're sort of being worked on. And then I've also got these turrets here, which I'm working on. There's a bit of a bug here where they will have a little bit of trouble. Like, they can, if you go too high up out of their firing arc, they actually won't really aim correctly. But if I just rotate this here, oh, wrong way. Rotate this back this way, to where the ship is in their firing arc. Oh, missed a little bit. Yeah, the aiming in this game is going to be a little bit better once it is a little more finalized. I'm just still kind of working on the system. So you see it's a little off. Yeah, it looks like it's a little off. But that'll be a little bit improved over the game. But the big weapon focus is going to be missiles. Now, there's going to be, you know, sort of a rock, paper, scissors kind of setup where certain weapons are going to work better against certain other ships. So I kind of want the game to allow the player to have some choice. So you're not going to be like forced into it. If you're fighting a missile frigate, you're not going to be like, oh, I must use my railgun batteries. You're going to be allowed a little bit of choice, especially with the wide variety of enemy ships there's going to be. I want the player to be able to make tactical choices. So they may go, even though the railguns might be better against the ship, I've got them unaware. They don't know I'm coming in. So I'm going to turn off my engines and coast in close, and then open fire with my missiles as I pass them by, because while they have better missile defense from point blank range, they're gonna have a lot harder time defending against my missiles. And that's sort of something that I want to do, is allow the player that sort of tactical flexibility. Right now I only have like this basic ship here, a couple of variety of basic ships. You can see there's some missile pods opening up and the fire, and I'm going to change the UI. This is just sort of a base UI. Oh, yeah. See, now that quest got completed. But sort of basically what I want to have happen is the player can make those kind of choices and be allowed that sort of freedom, so that so we completed that quest, and you see here there's a bunch of different options. This is most of what I've been working on here, is just getting this all working. So you can see here, this was just a very basic quest that I outlined, so that way I can work on the quest system from the other side, the actual creating quest missions. So this is just one of these. But yeah, as you can hear, my wife's playing games with the brothers. And then what'll happen is, so for example here, we have destroy this enemy ship, complete this quest. Sometimes the quest will be to destroy the enemy ship. Sometimes it'll be maybe to try and disable it. So you can fail those quests, but there's not really a huge punishment for failing capturing, because at the end of the day, with the story and everything, being able to destroy the enemy ship is still not a bad thing, even if you couldn't capture it like you were hoping to do. And with those kind of quests, it'll probably be, there's going to be a few different enemies, and you can try and capture any one of them. You're not going to be stuck with, you have to capture the specific ship or else you fail. And most of the fail conditions are not game overs. The only real game overs are sort of dying, but even that, you can save and go back. I want this to be difficult and challenging, but not, impossible. This isn't a Dark Souls in space game, although it is definitely going to have that challenging component. Now, this is just like a basic destroyed debris. In the final version, the ships are going to all have different bodies. When they get destroyed, you'll have something left behind this debris that you can then get close to, and it'll give you option to salvage. What'll happen is you'll launch some salvage shuttles that'll go out and recover materials. And that material, as you can see down in the bottom left, I've got 10 material. UI is definitely not finalized, so don't take any of this as final. But as you get material up, then you can go back, you can repair your ship. There's going to be certain limited upgrades. I don't want to focus too hard on the upgrade system, although I may focus a little bit more into it later on. But I want to have a couple of small upgrades, things like a little bit faster firing PDC, or maybe faster turn rate for them, higher output engines, more fuel efficient engines. I think fuel efficiency and thrust output are going to be the two biggest ones, because those are kind of game changers when it comes to space games. So eventually this whole system is going to have, engines, as you can see here, firing to turn the ship and stuff. I'm still working on that part, because that is a little bit complicated. I've got the sprite and everything created. I just need to have it functioning in game, so that when if you fire the engine this way, it fires, and then as it's slowing down, it should be firing from the opposite side. So programming that into the game is a little bit challenging, but nothing I can't get working. So that's basically what's coming up next, next little bit. My focus is going to be, because I don't have shields in here, getting sort of compartmentalized bits. So, if you take a missile to this little pipe section up front, what does this affect? This is probably, since the power seems to relay to these missile pods up here, you might lose access to these front missile pods. Which, while that is a blow to your offensive capability, the PDCs maybe would still be powered, because maybe they've got redundant built-in batteries. Maybe they're limited on time, so you have like a timer, like, hey, these PDCs in the front are going to run out of time. So you need to finish the fight or get out of there. And And then as well as on the front here, we've got this heat vent system. This is a big thing that I want to play into, especially with not having shields. The one thing you will have to manage, because since you don't have to manage shields, I still want you to have to manage the ship. One thing you have to manage is the heat output. As you can see, as it's starting to dim off, when you fire your guns, when you use your engines, when you just kind of do things, it builds up heat. Now by opening this like this, you're dumping the heat into space, which makes you much more visible to the enemy, especially as your heat output ramps up. So as you're firing your guns more, you're firing your engines, you're outputting a lot of heat, just dumping it into space. And so my plan is to have it so that as the heat goes higher, but you've got your vent system open, it's supposed to reduce your heat by just dumping it out. You're going to become easier to detect by the enemies. They're going to see you more often. So, say you're going to push an enemy stealthily, you're going to try and stay hidden. You're going to want to close your heat system here. And then what that's going to do is it's going to allow the heat to sort of build up in there. But by doing that, by allowing the heat to sort of build up, you allow yourself to be a little bit more stealthy. Now, the exact timers and everything and how fast these close and open, I haven't quite figured out exactly what kind of delay I want. It's still sort of work in progress because I like the little bit slower it takes time to open up and close. Although I need to adjust the heat animation because, of course, as you close them, it's not going to immediately just ramp up heat. But it is going to start, pumping heat back into the system because it's no longer an open to the space system. But yeah, that's sort of what I've been working on and sort of my plans for the future with this game. But otherwise, I think that's just about everything. I've covered most of what I've done. I've added a few placeholders. This is going to take place around Neptune, above the planet. I'm not sure about which of the Neptune moons or if I even want to have a moon near here or just a few asteroids. I'll have to look into it. I don't know as much as I'd like to about Neptune quite yet. That's sort of why I picked this place, because I know a lot about, I like space, so I know a lot about space. So my goal is to learn a bit more about Neptune and possibly put maybe, I believe it's Triton is one of its moons, or just one of them just nearby, that maybe that could be something the player could go near and visit. Maybe there'll be enemy stations there. I haven't quite decided because while yes, a lot of the fighting is going to happen in the vastness of space because space is huge. There's a lot of open area. I'm not going to pull very close together asteroids because let's be honest, they're very spaced out. They're many millions of miles apart. They're not like the movies where they're right next to each other and you have to dodge and weave. That's not how asteroids work. For gameplay though, I want them to be close enough that it's enjoyable, that you wouldn't just only see like one asteroid your entire game. So they're probably going to be a little bit closer than in real life, but a little bit more spaced out than in the movies. But yeah, so I've got that all working. And that's most of what I've been doing. Otherwise, I think that is just about everything. If you'd like to, you can support my Patreon down below. That helps speed up how much time I can spend on the game, because as it is right now, I have to work a full-time job, raise a kid, and work on this game. So if you are interested, you can support my Patreon down below. Otherwise, just leaving a like, a comment, or even subscribing would be a great help. It's always wonderful to see new members of the community. I do have a Discord down below, and I'm working to sort of revamp it now that I'm coming back into YouTube. I took a little bit of a break with having my kid and stuff. I want to be able to spend time with him. But now that he's sort of getting into the swing of things and getting more regular with his feedings and diaper changes and stuff, I want to get back into this. I still have a little bit of time off before I go back to work. I have about 10 days or so. So pretty much this whole week I'm going to be working with him and working on this. But otherwise, thank you guys for watching. If you're still here at the end, leave a comment down below saying banana. I'm curious to see who all made it this far. Otherwise, have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you. Bye-bye.